youngsters.
There's skateboards and rock and roll.
Tattoos, piercing. This mic is really close to the. Is this normal?
Yeah, there should be a pink box.
Outside the box. There's no box.
Yeah, if there is no box, you're neither inside nor outside the
I think
box.
this will be it. All right, let's get started. Okay, everyone, this is Tram.
Testing. This works.
All right, so we'll start with the usual chairs update. Next. Vote well. Next. We need a minute taker. Paul, thank you. If we can have a job described, that would be nice, although it's strict. Thank you, Jonathan. And as usual, the meeting materials, the slides and everything are at this URL, and work happens on the mailing list at this URL, and you can subscribe there. Next. So the agenda is we'll do our update, and then we have a presentation by Mark about StunBIS. He will try to get all the open issues resolved and get this to working with last call. And then we would like to have a working group discussion about TurnBIS to make sure that we're aligned with the latest changes in StunBIS. And then the meeting ends, so there's nothing extracurricular on the agenda. Next. So state of the tram. Since Berlin, things have been moving fast aboard the tram. And it doesn't, if you just look at the mail list, things may seem to be dormant, but, we've done work. So we have 2 new RFCs. Yay! Survey discovery, there were a lot of revisions, lots of discussions, and the discusses have been addressed, and the draft is now in the RFC editor queue. Yay! Stun Path MTU discovery has been revised. There's been a working group last call, and the draft will be sent to IESG shortly. We just need to do the work. And then StunBIS has been revised 3 times. There are quite a few changes. I wouldn't say major changes, but medium changes, medium impact changes. And we want to close the discussion today. We want to finish this and send this to working last call. And TurnBIS has been refreshed. This was a minor refresh. And work still needs to be done to review the StunBIS diff and sync if needed. We don't actually know if any work is needed, but I see nodding heads. So additional work might be needed there to sync with StunBIS. I think this is it for the chair's update. So with that, Mark.
Yeah. Any agenda, Bash?
Yeah. Okay, cool.
You have to turn it on. I turn it off. It was a test for you. Yeah, it's a bit unstable.
1, 2. Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
now works.
Hello again. Next slide, please. All right, so last time we presented StunBeast was back in Berlin, right? And there was a lot of comment, well, not a lot of comment, but some comments were made, and we, with my co-author, Gonzalo, we started working, and then we found yet another bug, and then another bug, and then another bug. And then I said, okay, we need to stop. To stop there, there is something wrong, and I need to take a little bit more time to do complete analysis. This was on LTCM, long-term credential mechanism, right? Which is one of the things which changed a lot in StunBeast. So, unfortunately, this was just right in the middle of my move back to California and a new job, so it took a bit of time, and I skipped Seoul. So finally, I did the analysis. It was not an analysis on StunBeast, it was an analysis on Stun, on RFC 5389, and I found a bunch of problems, which some minor, some less. So we talk with Jonathan, which we want to thank again for his help on all these things. And then we sent a proposal for the list. There was some back and forth, and we put the modification inside the list. So you probably all saw the modification, so I will go through quickly. There was some, I would say, delay issue when a packet was dropped because of an attack. So instead of having a timeout in this case, we kind of invented a new signal to the upper layer that said, well, you are under attack, which permits to close the transaction a little bit quicker. We made something explicit. I mean, you could deduce how it works, and probably people implemented the right way, but it was not explicitly stated how to work about 400 without authentication. My experience is that you really need to explain all the steps carefully. So we did that. We changed some of the should. It didn't make sense at all in the document. We made them must in some place. We made some small improvement, even nonce and password are wrong, and we are trying to recover into exchange into RTT instead of free, which was. We made also a small modification, which is, I think, in some case, an improvement in security, which is when you are changing the nonce or when you are changing the password, if you still have the nonce from the previous time, or if you still have the password from the previous time, then you can use it to sign the response instead of sending a naked response. So it's may, so you do it or you don't do it, but if you do it, obviously there is a little bit more security than you can have before. Okay, so one of the things was that annoyed me that it was 401 unauthorized, which is kind of incorrect. This is not unauthorized, this is unauthenticated. So we changed the text. Turn is doing use a separate response code for unauthorized, which is a different meaning. And there was some text that said you can add an MI, message integrity, on some response, where clearly there was no possibility at all to do this, so we removed the possibility. So this was the first step. We published, that was probably -09. So next slide, please. Then after fixing it, we could at last come back to the issue that were presented in Berlin. So we did a second round of modification on -10. So we removed some silly things, like we had reserved the 0 in the security registry, which doesn't make sense because this is a bit set. So obviously 0 has no meaning in a bit set, except that no bit. Following the recommendation of the working group, we said that the minimum truncation size for MI 256 is 16 bytes. We also changed the truncation order, so you have two choices, which is from the right or from the left. So we align with existing text, which I don't remember what it is, but this is aligned with what other is doing. So let's not surprise too much the developer. We added, there is a section in RFC 5389 and in StunBIS that lists what all the stun usage should say in their respective RFC, right? So we added the fact that from now, stun usage should state explicitly if they use truncation on the HashMac. This was silly. We removed the truncation from the message integrity. This is an old stuff. We don't need to care about this. This is going out. There was a word missing. On recommendation from Jonathan, we added a link to the C code, how to write the XOR code, how to XOR. So, the CRC, yes, thanks. So yes, I think it's an improvement because it's not easy to find. And finally, this was a response from an email from Ole during Berlin, one of the many emails that Ole sent. We replaced the reference to RFC 2018 to 6125, and we updated the text accordingly to explain how to verify the domain name from the certificate and to verify it against the domain name. Next slide, please. And then we did yet another update, which is -11, which is the last one. So I went back through all these things and I fixed a little bit more stuff. So first one is kind of obvious, is to say that we should use the same type of HashMac in the subsequent transaction that are used, but again, we really need to spell out these things clearly. And the last one is a little bit more, it's a little bit easy. This was from a suggestion from someone, I don't remember, I think it was in Berlin. So up to this version, we used what we call the nonce cookie only when we needed it. So the nonce cookie is a small cookie that we add in front of the nonce to say we have some additional security properties that we want to use. And there was one at the beginning, which was the possibility to change the password algorithm. And then we added a second one, which was to be able to hash the username, right? So the problem now is that you have an exponential number, increase of the number of cookies needed, right? You have 4 possibilities, you need 4 cookies. Well, 3 exactly, because you don't use the 0. So instead of doing this, what we did is that we added 4 characters to the cookie. So between the cookie and the nonce, we added 4 characters, which is 24 bits when it's converted from base 64, which gives us 24 bits of additional security properties that you can choose in the future. We created a registry for that, and we allocated the first 2 bits. The first bit is for if you want to use password algorithm, and the second bit is if you want to use user hash, if you want to hash your username. So the next step was, well, why don't we send always the nonce cookie, even with a 0 value in the bit set, to signal that we support MI2, that we support the new HashMac based on the Mac SHA-256. So now you always send the nonce cookie, and so you know immediately a Stunbeast client knows immediately that the server is also a Stunbeast client and do not have to send both the message integrity and the message integrity 256 to the server. So we, the first step is a little bit simpler for both the client and the server. But now if you don't use any of the security properties, then you just send a bit set that contain all zeros, right? This is why we remove it also from the register. So that was all was done, and this is the current set. So how we are. So there is still two small, I don't know, you will tell me, things that we need to fix. And so if we can have the next slide, please. All right, so we talk about this. We talk a lot about this, and we decided something. I would like one last time to be sure.
So Mark, before you go on, we would like really to close these issues, right? So let's focus on closing, not just going through and as you know, it happens in many working groups. So please, you know, each of the issues, let's give it a thought, and we will only postpone it if there's really need to happen something else, like more information. Otherwise, we would like to really make the decisions today.
Yeah. So something bad happened with SHA-1 just recently, which kind of make me not rethink. I still think that we are doing the right things. We had a long discussion, Gonzalo and I, and we think that the ISG may be not completely happy with the things we are doing. So, and I was thinking about this because I don't know if some of you went to the security tutorial on Sunday, which by the way was very interesting. And there was one slide that said to do not do exactly what we are doing. So, well, so. So they said, use agility, do not use a beast to change this. So I do not use agility for algorithm, do not use a beast to change the algorithm which is used in a protocol, which makes sense. So the thing is that I went back to the mailing list and everybody more or less agreed that this was the right thing to do, keep it simple for what we are doing, right? Now it will go in front of the ISG. The ISG, we said, okay, we said not okay, I don't know. I just want to have a last preemptive question, which is, do we still want to do this or not? And I would like to add one small thing. So this thing was difficult to design and to do, and the reason is that I could not find a lot of guidance about bit-done attack prevention. I mean, search at the IETF, and I searched also the literature in the. I mean, I went to the SCM library and Google Scholar, and there is not people talk about this, but they do explain kind of a framework how to prevent bit-done attack. So it feels to me that it's not an area which is really well explained and well. Anyway, we like to put this question in front of you. Do we continue this way? Do we want to change? Another thing that made me think about this. So just after the SHA-1 attack, the project which is probably the biggest user of SHA-1 hash is Git. And the people in Git started to say, well, perhaps we should do something, right? And they are jumping directly from SHA-1 to SHA-3. They will be doing SHA-3 to 56. We are doing SHA-2 to 56. So are we doing the right thing there? Do you want me to go up to the end and we talk about this, or we be open?
So let's be fixing one issue at a time, okay. I think. Yeah.
So I would like to hear from you. What do you want us to do?
So Mark, I mean, because the idea is to get a solution. If you put forward a proposal, I think that would work better.
My proposal is to do nothing and to keep what we have.
Okay.
And what we have is, just as a reminder,
What we have is that we are moving in this draft to SHA-256, and we will do a next draft after this in 6 months that will say no longer use SHA-1, which was the plan which was originally in RFC 5389.
Yeah, so Gonzalo, so the reason that I think that this is an issue is that we've made this decision before, right? I mean, we decided that we would stick with SHA-1. So,
No,
what was that?
not we stick with SHA-1, we stick with SHA.
Sorry, with SHA-2. But the idea here, though, is, do we need to revisit that decision? Simply to be, essentially to prevent what we think we're anticipating from the IESG.
Brandon Williams. I recall the meeting where we came to the conclusion that we should stick with this. My recollection is I was in a very, very small minority in the group at the time that said we should deal with the bid down stuff and deal with forward agility. But if the argument hasn't changed, if it's really just, this seems okay, and I think the argument at the time was, well, it's just as much work to add another option type to the stun registry as it is to add another hash type to some other registry that we would set up, unless we're able to piggyback easily on a registry that already exists. So fundamentally, it might just be a question of registry management overhead. At least I think that's what the opinion was at the time. My opinion hasn't changed. I still think we should build it into the protocol, but I recognize I'm in a minority there, and I'm not going to push that. I won't be surprised if security review from out of the IASG pushes it, and
So, John Lennox, so the first thing, for what we're using it for HMAC, the end of SHA-1 is not on us. SHA-1 is not broken for HMAC. So, and also for SHA-2, I don't think anybody's saying, and nobody's saying SHA-2 is insecure. They just want to have SHA-3 because it's a very different design, so it gives more, you're less likely to have a break that hits both of them at the same time. I feel like, I think actually our hash agility right now is pretty good. Maybe I need to review it. I sort of worked through all of this to sort of say, okay, is this all right? And so then we have some of the, certainly for the long term, some of the cookies and stuff.
Well, so remember, we have agility for the password algorithm.
Right.
We have this, and we have bit done protection for this. We don't have agility for the message integrity, which is integrity of the message itself, and there is no.
Well, I think that's why we chose to name the new thing specifically message integrity SHA-256.
Yeah.
By saying you can have message integrity any hash algorithm you want. You just have to define it and
a new one.
Standardized.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, exactly. The agility is by defining a new attribute.
But
Yes.
I feel like that's, I don't see what we would gain by saying we're going to put those additional bits saying what hash algorithm it is in the message integrity, into a message integrity attribute itself, other than just, yet another registry and yet another n-bit field that takes up space in the messages. I think.
Does it put us in a situation?
Do you want to use the mic?
Mike.
But does it put us in a situation where, so now we're on stun turf, whatever the 4th revision is, where the next one's, okay, now we're going to do SHA-3. Is it?
Yeah. No, but it's actually, this is actually the 3rd revision of stun. No, sorry, I was excited. What was your actual question? Sorry.
So, does it put us in a situation where now we have to come up with a 4th revision that's going to be, okay, now we want to do SHA-3 and do, essentially, we do algorithm, which is what they want us to go away from.
But why is, so, Again, I'm trying to see how is that different from saying we're going to have hash agility by putting you're still going to have to define, hey, use this hash algorithm and whatever. This is the registry for what that means. I mean, if you want to say, okay, here's a lighter weight template for defining, message integrity your hash algorithm here, as a cut and paste register, some attribute registration, and this has the special property that's the message integrity, and towards the end, ignore everything after it, yada yada yada. Maybe having a somewhat more general description of how message integrity whatever's work. That's fine, but I think that wouldn't change how things look on the wire. It just changes how it's documented and makes the work for defining a new message integrity SHA-3 or whatever slightly less hard. And that's not unreasonable, I think, to sort of have that more templatized in the document.
It's like it's their version of future-proof.
Exactly.
And I got to say exactly what Jonathan got to in the end, that if this is our approach for hash agility, the thing that maybe is missing from the document is a clear statement of this is our approach, and when you want to add another one, this is what it looks like to get there. That may be what's necessary to convince those that want to see a hash agility approach that we actually have that covered.
Yeah. Okay.
It's help people with
That seems a good way to do this. Yeah. So we have hash agility by doing a new document, which will happen to be a BIS or not.
It could be
An update or yeah.
I think that documentation may need to cover the hash negotiation or the bid down attack side of
Yes.
it as well.
Yeah, so the idea is how do you change this to have a text? We already have a section, security consideration, that explicitly explain how to move to the next level. So we have to modify this to explain now how we're doing things. Right, it seems reasonable to me.
Mine will be quick. I'm Spencer Dawkins, the responsible AD, and somebody invoked the name of the ISG doing review. Perhaps sector, like any directorate now, I think, will accept requests for early review. If you all want to short circuit a long conversation at ISG evaluation time, that may be a good thing to do.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is the hash agility plan in the document right now.
Yes.
I will remove the highlighting.
Yeah, Jonathan, I feel like we've lost the edge of your somehow.
Oh yeah. This is let me. Yeah, I don't know why is it showing so weird actually?
Close
Yeah.
your bookmarks sidebar. Maybe it's
Maybe it's
there. You go.
okay.
Yeah, file a bug right now.
No, it's just that. Okay, there we go.
Yeah, I feel like. Yeah, so I think that's reasonable. We also need to make sure that the language about how you prevent bit down for MI256 is also sufficiently general for how you would prevent bit down for future hash algorithms as well.
Yes, it's a good question, and I would like suggestion because this is a very hard.
Right, so
It goes back to
the way I understand it is that this draft, as it is, doesn't prevent bid down at all. And the way to prevent bid down is with a later draft or a later RFC that would say, do not use SHA-1 anymore. And then you just go into your server configuration or whatever. If you refuse to use it,
I think this one, given the mechanism as it's described here, I think protection against bit downs does require that you have an orderly process of, I've got two now, I deprecate one, then I add another one, and you can move forward that way. But if you have a multiplicity that are allowed, it just gets more and more complicated to make sure that you've got everything covered.
Yeah, John, thanks. I mean, I think, and but bid down, I mean, as bid down as I understand it is the case where, both sides want to use the new hash algorithm, but some attacker in the middle is forcing them to go down to an old one, right?
Yeah.
So if either side doesn't want to use the new one, it's not a bid down, it's just backward compatibility. So I think, I think that for MI256 per se, we have a pretty good story for long-term credential. I'm not positive about short-term credential. I'm not sure how well that currently generalizes. I think some of it is, do you have the nonce cookie and whatnot, which obviously you don't have for short term. So we might need to look at that again.
So for short term, what I would suggest is that the ICE people use the SDP to explain, to have an attribute that says.
Anytime you have either SDP or a
Yes.
stun or turn URI.
An external signaling way of saying that.
External signaling. So obviously then the external signaling is vulnerable, is potentially the spot for bid down, but.
Well, which is not no longer, yeah.
So, but yeah, I think
It's not
I will, commit to, and thus means chairs, please nag me to review this for understanding how the bid down works. Like I said, I think the long term is pretty good, though I need some clarification. Short term, I'm less certain about.
Brandon Williams again. Am I remembering correctly that with the SHA-1 to SHA-256, the thing that protects against bid down is the what are we calling it, the nonce cookie? And once we've gone beyond SHA-1 and everything is delivering the nonce cookie, what will protect against bid down for 256 to SHA-2 to SHA-3 or whatever, if everything is...
It's a really good point, probably a new cookie. So perhaps we need... No, the cookie bits are for the additional security. So yeah, perhaps we can use a bit. Well, yeah, it's a good idea. Yes, we can use a bit which is well stunned there, right?
Well, no, so we're already on target.
Well, technically it's already stunned
I
there.
think this is stun tur. I think next is stun
Quattro, quadro,
I don't know Latin that well. Yeah, but so I think you could have a bit in the field, which means, hey, I support SHA-3.
Yeah.
And if I support SHA-3, I expected this to carry a SHA-3. If you see something not SHA-3 in here, be unhappy.
Yes.
But again, that's the nonce, so that's only. The nonce is also short term?
No, it's only long term.
Yeah,
but
so short-term.
again, the short term can be only protected by an external things
Right.
because you don't have
Yeah, because it's
time to negotiate things.
right, which might mean that basically have a cookie bit per hash algorithm.
For protecting the hash algorithm.
Cookie bit meaning, hey, I expect, I support this hash algorithm. If you don't see this hash algorithm here,
So we probably need to explain a little bit more in this section how this will work for future version. So we need to extend this. Who is the note taker for? Okay, thanks. We will need to have the. Oh.
You want to summarize?
Yeah, I think the consensus is that. Yeah, okay. The consensus is that. Well, I cannot call the consensus.
No, but just
Okay.
Summarize your understanding of the discussion.
My understanding is that we keep things as they are. So we keep our pseudo agility by letting people write a new specification that will define a new attribute. And we change the text in the hash agility plan to explain how this will be done.
And it might also be that
And yeah. And we can define we will probably define a new bit in the nonce registry for this. And everyone should be happy.
And I would include in that understanding Spencer's good comment of passing whatever we document there past sector for early review before we get to the point of passing it to.
We certainly want to make all the modifications we can this time before the end of this meeting and send everything to the pre-review at the ASG and to the working group.
Okay, so then we will wait for you to revise the draft before asking for any early review. Okay.
Yes.
So everyone opposed to this way forward, please hum. Okay, so then, yeah, you can move forward with that. By the way, when Mark doesn't remember what we have discussed and he goes to the recordings, everything that you guys are saying outside the mic, it will not be captured. So I think that would be useful to to try to use the mics. Okay, so let me go to the next slide.
All right, this is the last one. So, but it's so. So, back in Berlin,
Some things are better not captured in the recording.
this was Ole third email, which was, well, you need to do something about happy eyeball. And I didn't call it Stoneball. So, we didn't know exactly what to do, but I still did an analysis of all the case and all what we do. I had also lunch with Dan Wing, and he gave us some advice, and we talked with Jonathan yesterday, I think, about this. So the problem is that the IPv6 thing is not a stun thing, it's the stun usage thing, right? It's not really stun by itself, it's not the mechanism, it's how you use stun that start to have issues. When you resolve a domain name, you receive one or more IPv4 address and one or more IPv6 address, right? So I found 3 cases. So the first one is more or less everything which is related to ICE. So IP eyeball doesn't really make sense when it's used with ICE or when it's used with SIP. And the reason for this is that, well, let's start with ICE. With ICE, we already have a mechanism, which is ICE, to select between an IPv6 and IPv4 address, right? This is what, among other things, ICE is about. You prioritize IPv6 before IPv4, you check the connectivity, and automatically gives you what is the current best path. So using this, and you don't really have inside ICE when you are, well, you can get done, and I will explain, but it's kind of difficult to do, to have 2 different algorithms, right? If we do IP eyeballs, and we have the first selection, which is done by ICE, and then you have a second algorithm which shows what is the connection to use underneath. So it's kind of a complex thing. But all this thing comes from one thing, which is that when you look at the C line, or when you look at the candidate line, you can put an IP address, an IPv4 address, an IPv6 address, an IPv10 address. It's the way. But you can also put a domain name, right? It's authorized not by ICE, it's authorized by the SDP RFC to put a domain name here. Not a lot of people use this, but it's still here. So what we would like to propose, and we cannot do this in this place, but there is our friend in ICEBIS that are revising ICE. And one solution that a lot of people we talk to would be, think would be the best solution is to use the fact that we have ICE2 to say, well, don't do this. You cannot use a domain name inside a C line and inside a candidate when you are doing ICE, because you already have the mechanism to do this. So in this case, it will solve all our problem. And we can do this in ICE too because this is a new protocol. Yes, you wanted to say something.
There's Paul Martinson. We do some hacks when we want to pass through HTTP proxies where we actually need the URL stuff in the ICE candidate.
But really?
We can get back to that.
Ben Schwartz, Google. So similar to an HTTP proxy, in the context of return, there's also where you're using return service as a proxy. There's also a situation where it can be logical to use a domain name as your endpoint identifier. And I tried and failed to get a draft through that would create an explicit mode for return to allocate to allocate a remote endpoint based on a domain name. And I'd like to be able to try that again, so I hopefully it won't get cut out of entirely.
All right.
Jonathan, I mean, the first thing I would say is how ICE behaves is not is not this working group's problem.
Yes.
So, I mean, and I think you could come up with, even if you want to leave domain names, you say, you know your local candidate's address type, so pair the v4 address you looked up for it with your v4 candidates, pair the v6 address you looked up with your v6 candidates, or whatever. It's probably more complicated than that, it's 64 max, but I think that could be probably dealt with, effectively treated as multiple remote candidates. But that's ICE's problem, and so I think we don't need to solve it here.
All right. I like this. So the other case is the seek keep alive, which is not inside ICE, but I think this is not an issue because I already know what kind of protocol, what kind of transport they use. So it's not an issue. So your proposal would be let the ICE people deal with it, which, by the way, is the same answer we'll have for Tram, but we will get to this.
Gonzalez, Salguero. But if we do that, I mean, I figured there would at least need to be some text here around what ICE is going to do. So if ICE does nothing or they screw it up or what, I mean, what impact does that have to us here?
We don't really have to say anything because the ICE usage are not defined in this draft. The only usage we have is the usage that are here in the middle. Yes, we have to say something for this, but no, we don't really have to say anything for ICE, I think.
Paul again. There's an ICE draft called ICE Dual Stack Fairness, which actually started out as ICE happy eyeballs for ICE. Yeah. I'm gonna note that. I'm not sure whether that covers this problem, but it does.
So I think the answer is it doesn't, but solving this problem is not, is not actually that hard. And if we, we get, I mean, I think it is ICE's problem. It's a solvable problem. I think, maybe this needs to say that usages need to explain how they do.
Yeah.
I
definitively want to add in the stun usage list of things to do. Then tell us exactly. Yes.
If you use domain names for any reason, explain how you do, multiple address setting support.
So, do we agree to let the ICE people figure out, and we don't say anything but what Jonathan said?
So, anyone opposed to that way forward?
Answer us.
No, Gonzalez, Salguero. No, not opposed at all, but we should have some sort of enforcement to make sure that we circle back with the ICE folks, that they actually do something.
Oh, yes.
I agree, it's a very solvable problem, but it should get solved.
So we were synchronizing with SOAS to present, to say the same thing in music on Thursday. I think. So we will have to talk with SUAS to say, change our mind.
Well, I think, Jonathan, I mean, even if you, but like I said, even if people want to keep the domain names, it's a solvable problem. But I think, like I said off mic, I think the only person who would object is Krister because it means he has to do work to add it to the ICE spec, but I don't think it would actually be that hard to add.
Okay. So
Yeah, I think the thing we would need to do for this, right, again, is to make sure that the user requirements, you mentioned this explicitly.
Okay.
So let's make sure we keep Krister in the dark. No, actually, make sure that you talk to Krister and talk to Ari as well, so that they can actually, get the feedback from the ICE working group. Okay.
Gonzalo, one of the things though to realize is though I think the discussion had with Suhas for the changes for ICE SDP are no longer valid. I mean, based on what Ben said and all that. So
Yes, and I will talk with SUAS.
Okay.
All right. So the second line is what we have to do anyway, because this is the stun usage. Well, one of these is described inside this draft RFC, and the other one is exactly the same. So it's relatively simple. I already found the place where to change it. The great thing with NAT discovery is that we use binding. Binding is an, let me say it right, idempotent request transaction, which means we can send as many as we want. We are not breaking anything. And we have some use case that Jonathan explained to us yesterday. So it will be relatively simple work to add the text to this. So we will certainly do that, unless there is question or people who have question on this part.
I mean, sometimes the one thing I think we should make sure to call out, if it's not already there, but it might be, to make sure to point out that just because you're sending on V4 doesn't mean you won't get a V6 as your discovered address or vice versa. So because you might be behind a 4.6 net or a 6.4 net. But yeah, I think that certainly for any of the ICE cases of turn, you'll allocate your candidates for all your interfaces, and then you'll have some V4 and some V6. So you send to the V4 stunt address from V4, send to the V6 address from V6, and that's easy. And you need to send it from all your interfaces anyway.
Okay, I hope the note taker well, we already talked about this, so we remember to do this. And so the last one, the difficult one, is turn, right? Because the problem is that an allocate in turn is not a idempotent transactions. Each time you send an allocation request, and you can receive a port, and it could be or not an issue. I don't know. So it's a nice progression to the next discussion. We think that this is a term problem, and they should think how to fix this thing. I don't know. There is some we thought of some with Simon, but we think that this is anyway a term suggestion, and with the text added to the stun usage saying, yeah, you need to talk about this, and we are covered. Is there any comment on the term usage, or you think that we should be?
What is the proposal exactly, if you can summarize it?
It's to do nothing. It's to just update the stun usage, saying any usage should not, from now, say something about API Bible, and then we add this to the list of things to do in turn-based.
Okay, but yeah, let's still think about what would go in turn-based.
Right. That's what I was going to say. That's the proposal. This now becomes Alan's and Tito's problem.
Yeah. So I have two ideas. Well, the first thing is that they can design an extension, which is an identifier which is common to the two requests, and then there is only one allocation on the other side, and the one which is not used, you can just drop the transaction, and it's allocated only one time.
Also, the discussion on term-based comes right after
okay.
that, and this is your last slide. So
yes.
let's wrap this up and move.
Okay.
Anything else on Sambase?
So yeah, the last thing is, so I think that the summary point of this whole slide is based on Ollie's email. Do we want to take on? So here, this is essentially a summary of what work is involved in making this happy eyeballs friendly. Is this something we want to do, take on? Okay.
Simon, as a participant, yeah, I think it totally makes sense for this to be dependent on the actual usage. Because stun can be used at the IP layer to discover IP layer properties, or it can be used as a communication protocol. For example, when talking to a turn server, you don't really care about the family of IP that you're using. So it depends on the usage.
Everybody's happy with that? Well, the main question is like, you guys have all the information you need to go off and revise the draft?
I think we have everything, and we can do it before the end of the week and send.
Okay.
We are the first to want to have this done.
No, I understand that. Yeah. That's why I want to make sure you are comfortable with that. Perfect. So moving on to the next one, which is term Bs, actually. Yeah, we can keep the slide, actually. So, yeah, you want to...
Yeah, all right. Okay. So I was looking at, so Simon, as a participant again, I was looking at section 6.2 in TurnBis, which explains what the server does when it receives an allocate request and how it detects retransmissions. And so it uses the transaction ID and the 5-tuple. So one option would be to remove the 5-tuple from the check. If you receive the same transaction ID on a different 5-tuple, so possibly from somebody else, it's the same transaction. So keep in mind there are 96 bits of randomness there, plus authentication. Yep. So yes, but authentication isn't part of the retransmission detection.
Yeah, I sort of think I like that because we also have problems because clients need to, like, if they go down and up, they can't reuse their original local port because of this problem, because you get the same binding in the NAT and then.
I have an interesting thought. Jonathan Lennox. Allocate requests which generate a 401 are item buffers. Okay. And your first allocate request should always generate a 401. Yeah.
Can you elaborate?
Basically, you send an allocate request with no authentication information to both the 4 and 6 addresses. You'll get a 401 response from one or the other or both, at which point you send the one with the authentication information.
Awesome.
Unless somebody has configured their turn server to not use authentication, in contrast to this spec, which sometimes people do.
Oh, it's mandatory in turn, isn't it?
Actually, no, because we're changing that for, that's the tricky thing, because it was mandatory in turn, but I think we're changing it for the thing that's topologically equivalent to an outbound proxy. Basically, if you can enforce authorization through, network topology or whatever, you don't have to have.
Okay, so then suppose that an enterprise network sets up any cast ranges for both IPv6 and IPv4, and they turn off authentication because they manage the network, and you get 2 allocations. It's not a big problem either. You just kill one.
That's true, yeah.
And that was my second proposal.
Yeah,
Document that you need to close one.
Yeah, right. So.
And if you don't keep it alive, if you just forget about it, it'll die by itself.
Either you don't kill it, you do forget about it, or you actually, there is an explicit kill message too.
There is.
Yeah.
Yes, refresh with 0, right?
Yes, what?
Refresh with 0?
Refresh with 0, yeah. So I think the answer is, so I think between those things, and then the other thing, of course, is connecting over TCP, you can do the standard TCP happy eyeballs. Just whichever one does the TCP connect first.
Mm-hmm. Extremely happy turn balls.
Yes. So I think we have 3 different answers for how you turn ball. So sort of in order of preference.
Yep. Okay, Jonathan, can you volunteer to send text to the list summarizing this? Please volunteer.
Sure.
Thank you.
If I forget, remind me I volunteered.
Yes.
So, note taker, do you get that? So, the fact that he volunteered? Okay. Okay, yeah, more things about term Bs. Mark, do you have anything else?
So I still have on my list to do a review for ICE and to do a review for term for the point of view of stun list. So I started with the turn one, and this is a big spec. And I stopped it right in the middle, and we had time to restart. So yeah, I promise when I will get back to California, I will restart my my review, and I will send a review in the next 2 weeks.
So to be clear, you will review term Bs from the point of view of the new stun Bs, because that's exactly what we are concerned about. So you will be sending basically
a complete review, but
excellent.
Only from the point of view
Excellent.
of the bits that are
excellent, because that's exactly what we need. Okay, perfect. That's great.
But while we're all in the room, is there anything you can think of that would merit discussion?
Well, so I found one thing which I didn't like is the new term Bs, and the problem is that it's written on the document somewhere at home, and I didn't take it with me. So, and I don't even remember because this was a few months ago. I didn't find anything very important on the stun Bs part. So, but it's the normal stuff. This is aligning the way they are doing things to the way we are doing things, saying, okay, now you need to use SHA to blah, blah, blah. So it's not, it's more, yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I should have taken this with me, but I didn't.
Okay, have you thought of using an ebook to take electronic notes? Just kidding. Thanks a lot for the review, and you know, I mean, we are looking forward to receiving it. Alan and Tiru couldn't be here, unfortunately. That's why, I mean, it's a bit difficult to drive the discussions. But anyway, I think this input is what they need, actually. Okay, so anything else? Well, I mean, just to be clear, like you were mentioning before, like, you know, getting more drafts through and stuff. I mean, to be clear, we are trying to close this working group. So in that sense, if somebody wants, you know, to publish more drafts or things that we should be doing more work, I mean, now it would be, now, I mean, drop us an email or on the mailing list so that we analyze that. Because, I mean, to be honest, the level of energy is not the best. So we want to avoid just, you know, adding stuff and generating drafts that they take, you know, years to complete. So that's where we are. If you don't agree, please, I mean, talk to us so that we can understand if there's something that realistically makes sense to do. Jonathan.
Yeah, so Jonathan, I mean, I know there were, you know, a number of suggestions early in the working group of potential extensions, and the consensus at that time is, no, let's get the revisions of the core specs done first. But I think there was sort of some thought that you might go back to those things afterwards. And there's usually, I feel like there's often more energy for, you know, at doing new things than getting old things working well, especially if there's somebody who's pushing it. So.
Yeah, it could be. My concern is exactly, I mean, energy. Yeah. So what I would like to avoid is like the chairs, now we go off and try to generate some energy. I mean, this should be actually people that are ready to spend cycles. And if they are, I mean, we are more than happy. And I mean, we would need to talk to Spencer, of course. But yeah, we would be more than happy to working on the extensions that we were talking about, but not just artificially where there's no real interest. So that's, I think we are all on the same page regarding that. Yes.
Ben Schwartz, Google. We have working groups we have RTC Web still. It seems like we have ICE. So as long as it's made clear that the work can continue, that basically improvements to turn can happen, and that there is a place for them, it's not important to me which working group they happen in, but I have at least felt, maybe I'm wrong, that sometimes a working group closes and people just say, well, that's it. This standard can no longer be modified unless you go through the whole working group formation process.
Yeah. So to be clear, I don't care either. I mean, let's focus on doing the right thing. If it's, AD sponsor is a different working group, is to keep this alive, it doesn't matter. So just concentrate on my point on, is there energy? And once there's energy, we will do the magic admin support so that it happens. So exactly, it's more about whether there's something that needs to be done, and then we will decide, how and what and when.
So, for example, if suppose that Quick decides to use stun as a substrate, we'll keep the working group alive.
Yeah, Paul.
Yeah, Paul, is having real implementations going to add energy, do you think? Because we have a few things we do with stun we would like to document and send to the working group. We have done that in the stun trace regard, where we use ICMP messages and get feedback, and we have working implementation and getting feedback from that we would like to share with the group. Problem is that getting that into browsers is fairly difficult.
Yeah, I mean, right, and that's why we are in the IETF, because this is kind of networking paradise in that sense. You can talk to people from browsers, you can talk, so it's not really talking to us. We can help, obviously, but the idea is to form a community that, decides that this is important. So yeah, that's why we are here. We as everybody.
So it's all about demonstrating, enthusiasm and community and, critical mass. And right now we're in closing mode, and as you can see from the level of activity both in the mailing list and in the room, closing mode is what we should be in.
Yeah, and I agree with that.
Yep.
So the message is, if there's something you believe it's important, please let us know, create traction around it, and then we will take it.
Yep.
Okay? Yeah, that's summarizing. Okay, anything else? Any other business before we wrap up? Okay, so thank you for coming. The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you. That went well.
Yeah, this is, I don't know. Okay, so I remember was that we finished the presentation and I was empty files. You were sure. But actually, I had no. So it was I said like, yeah, this sucker. That's right.